Councillor Ford, in your introduction, you said that things were a little tight this year, to paraphrase, and that the reserves would, in the first year, dip below the minimum level. I appreciate you have a plan to deal with that. Given that we're obviously still in a difficult time economically, there is, I think, scope for further reductions in income across the board. And I think there's also, from my view of the budget, a degree of work to be done in terms of getting the savings on board in the financial year. You've said, I think you said in your introduction that you ideally would like to be making a couple of £1 million further savings in the budget.
I suspect so, yes.
Yeah. If the existing savings that you've identified don't come as quickly as you would like, or there are further pressures, what kind of measures do you envisage taking? And in particular, I have in mind this £250,000 you've put in the budget book for income generation, which at the moment I don't think is specified.
Well, I'm not actually anticipating plans or problems until actually I've got to them, thank you. And that is why we're going to have the Star Chamber every 3 months to take a very careful look, make sure that the budget is on course, and if not, take remedial action then. And that appropriate action will be whatever it is at the time. I'm not going to anticipate that now. But there is in the budget, there's no doubt, there's still, to my mind, some money like ICT and some of the roads which is being capitalised, and this is maintenance now. It's been traditional to capitalise road maintenance. I'm not clear whether, in my view, that's a sustainable activity. So we'll be looking very closely at that, and those are sort of a couple of million that I'd certainly like to sort out for starters. Whether we should be capitalising IT is another, these are quite fundamental questions we've got to address properly and decide on what our answer will be. We can do these things, they're perfectly permissible accounting-wise. It's just whether that is a wise procedure. I always look very strictly that assets should be something that you have on the ground, that in the end you've got something to show for your expenditure, which lasts a period of time. And particularly if we're borrowing money for 25 years, you would reasonably expect your asset to match that. And if not, then you would borrow for some lesser time and take a slightly higher cost hit in your capital and interest repayments. So there's a proper way of running accounts, and I will be looking at that very carefully. So whatever the prehistory of what various of our departments or councils may have done in the past, I will take a very rigorous approach to how we account for it, because I want to make sure we have a sustainable budget and a sustainable operation, and I think that's quite important for the future of the council. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Just a short comment, if I may, and I just worry somewhat as to why Councillor Ford has gone very grey of late, and yet our leader hasn't. So one presume quite clearly that we now know where the responsibility in this council now lies. Councillor Ford.
Board delegation.
Yeah, you can call it that. Councillor Ford, you've talked at length about savings. I was very concerned on your comments that the reserves this year are lower than you would like. Can you assure us that we're not going to be embarrassed so soon into the life of this new council? And when do you foresee the time when we can make genuine savings?
It was always known.
Particularly trouble me. The first is to sort of understand where we think the pinch points are now, because in
that as a result of taking the staff redundancies early, right? In the original plan, they were going to be taken after April the 1st. As it is, they're going to be taken up front, so they will hit our reserves immediately. And we can't avoid doing that. It was always known we were going to end up the year end, whichever way it was done, however, at the lowest point of our reserves by definition, because we were taking up front all the costs of the reorganisation. And you can't avoid that. Now we can spread, as we will do, some of the actuarial costs over something like 5 years. So There was always going to be, and the Manchester government recognised this, that this would be the lowest point would be the 31st of March 2010.
I'll just pick up on this, because this is why Councillor Crowe has no hair, because he takes a bit of understanding of these.
Oh, Chairman, that's not there, because that was going to be my last line on the next one. Going home.
Just to aid Councillor Crowe's understanding a little bit, is that it is genuine savings that we are making, and that's why the redundancy bill is forward, and we are working very closely with the 4 councils, which has enabled us to lose over 200 staff, plus the directors and chief executives as well. Now, there's a fairly big bill for that, and we're taking that up front because that allows the savings to start from the 1st of April. And it's a 1.6 year payback. Now, if we'd have kept them on for 6 months, we'd have had the same cost in 6 months' time, but we'd have had the staff cost for additional 6 months. So we are making real savings, but unfortunately bringing forward those redundancies means that we use the cash balances that the existing councils are effectively handing over, but they won't hand over so much now because they are spending it on the redundancies, which we've agreed with them. So that's basically the simplistic of it. So I hope that helps your understanding, Councillor Crowe.
You happy with that?
Yes, I did.
2 things that
First of all, there will be pinch points because we're bringing together 4 budgets, and we only received the capital expenditure list, which is why they're just pure.
inevitably, when you're devising a budget like this, you're going to have an idea, I would imagine, where you're more likely to have greater trouble than not. And I appreciate, of course, you're going to turn around to me and say, well, look, we've got the Star Chamber going to meet every 3 months or so. So where are we anticipating the pinch points in this budget? Where are things tighter than other areas? Where are you particularly concerned, or where are you particularly vigilant in the figures?
Ongoing budget restrictions that you have highlighted.
From each council, effectively, the Friday before the executive meeting, so that's why the papers were late going out for the executive. So, you know, there's a lot of knowledge to be gained about the detailed workings of all the budgets as we build these together. And part of our risk management framework is the Star Chamber process, which we as executive members are driving in an understanding of what's going on in the directorates with our new directors and the new management teams. And so that's part of our risk management. Clearly there are pinch points. Children and young people, safeguarding is a very important one, and that's been underfunded by the County Council for a number of years, and what we are doing is committing an extra £2 million to fund that and to start to get that on the right track from a budget point of view. So when we say that's the budget, that's what they spend, rather than they say this is a budget, but they always know they're overspend, which is not a sustainable way of doing things. Foster carers, we've put £200,000 in for that because we are losing foster carers and they are our vulnerable children, so we need to try and address that and reverse that. Borrowing approval from government is a key one. We don't know how that's going to pan out. Likewise, the income over the next 3 or 4 years as we build our medium-term financial strategy. And that income is going to potentially cause some problems for us. Sale of assets in a difficult market. We're going to be rationalising our assets. We need to rationalise those assets to reduce our revenue costs as part of our process. And, of course, the procurement of our services in terms of costs tend to be for councils higher than the inflation, and of course the staff wages and which are tend to be funded over and above, or tend to be over and above the level of government grants. So clearly we've got some issues there. We need investment. We need to invest in our IT systems so we can move from offices and rationalise our organisation, and of course the personalisation agenda for adult services is a big issue which we are developing our policies and processes to deliver that, and there are costs to that, and so clearly there's potential unknowns in that particular area as well. So there's quite a list of potential pinch points, as you call them. I would call them risks, actually, to the budget. But as I say, the risk framework that we've put in place through the Star Chamber, where we do have those challenge processes between the officers and executive members to improve our learning and understanding of the whole budget by all of us, is part of that process of understanding that, where we can make quick adjustments. And what I've said before to our partners, because clearly our partners outside the council are very concerned. If we miss something in this process, and we've got one of our key partners that hasn't got an income because we've missed it, we need a process very quickly to be able to adjust to that, to fund that. Or if there's duplication or things that we don't need to spend, we can adjust that as well on a quarterly basis. So it's a process of actually not just managing the risk with our council budget, but with our partners as well, working closely with our partners. And we will be sharing this with our partners. We made that commitment to them, and anybody else, including yourselves, as part of that process.